Thanks all for joining today. I know this is a really challenging time for all of us, and we appreciate just a quick intro for those of you who don't know me. I'm a social entrepreneur, have been focused on the education space for many decades, and I'm on the faculty at the School of International and Public Affairs, where I teach nonprofit management, social entrepreneurship, and a new course on design and social innovation. Manal was my student not so long ago and actually took my social entrepreneurship course. And she came with an idea of starting a hummus business. She is from Lebanon. And that idea evolved and has pivoted many times, and even in the past couple of weeks has pivoted again. But Manal has been someone I have followed since she was a student, and I'm so proud of the work she's done. And she's really what I would call an entrepreneur, because she is open and empathetic, and as I mentioned, pivoted many times. And so I invited her here today to not only talk about her journey as an entrepreneur, because I know many of you, particularly students, are interested in entrepreneurship, but also talk about how she's been dealing with this crisis the past several weeks. And so maybe, Manal, we could start going backwards a little bit, even though it sounds like lots of people have eaten your food, they may not know your story. So maybe tell us a little bit about your journey from Lebanon to New York, and then starting this venture, and what it's looked like the past few years.
Absolutely. And I'm going to start by thanking you, Sarah. You've been a great source of support since we started. I'm going to mention that in a little bit. When I came to you initially with the idea of creating a hummus business, you thought it was cute, with all that kind of means as a term, and that kind of, led me to go into a few different directions. So you have probably inspired some of these pivots that I think were instrumental to our existence today, or to our survival up until this point, as well as many others. I know Chris is here from the Colombia Startup Lab. So I think, the Tamer Center for Social Ventures. Also, I think all of these Colombia institutions have been a great source of not only inspiration, but they've been a great source of support for us since the start and even up until now. So thank you for hosting us, for hosting me today. Back to our story. So, you've mentioned that my name is Manal Kahi. I am originally from Lebanon. I'm the co-founder and CEO today at Eat Off Beat. We are it's really funny to do the pitch today, because we've changed so quickly. But up until last month, I would have said we are a catering company that delivers authentic meals entirely conceived, prepared, and delivered by refugees resettled here in New York City. I say we were because today we're something completely different. Catering as an industry is kind of canceled for the next few months, probably until July, August, or even September. So that's why I'm kind of in this phase where we don't really know who we are or what we are, but we'll talk. I guess, Sarah, you have a bunch of questions on that, so I'll address that in a little bit. But back to my own personal story, I mentioned that I came from Lebanon as a graduate student at SIPA. That was in 2013. Before that, I was working as an environmental consultant in Beirut, mostly working on projects in the Middle East. And we reached somewhat of a ceiling back there in terms of growth or what I could do. And that's how I was working a bit in climate policy. So that's kind of why I decided to come to SIPA, to mostly, my goal was to go into international climate affairs or international environmental affairs in general. And that's kind of why I chose New York. Luckily, that took some time to secure visa funding, all of that, but I came here in 2013. Again, the goal was to work for multilaterals, environmental organizations, but I ended up doing something completely different. You know the story. You know where I ended up. I ended up in food. That was mostly because I was disappointed with hummus as soon as I got here in New York, in grocery stores. So again, coming from Lebanon, really high standards when it came to hummus, or hummus as it's called here. I really didn't find anything that would satisfy my cravings, right? I was missing home cooking from back home. I was missing really good hummus. So I started making it on my own, called my grandmother, got her recipe, started making it at home, and that became successful all of a sudden, especially at SIPA. I would have friends hosting, parties at home or whatever, and they would say, "Oh, Manal, please, can you bring your hummus?" And anecdotally, that kind of gave us the idea, at the time it was myself and my brother, that, hey, why don't we find a way to sell it? If that hummus is so successful, there must be a market gap somewhere. There's an opportunity, there's a market opportunity there. And this is really where the idea for hummus started, or for circulating hummus, I would say. And the whole point was, again, I was at SIPA. I was here to work in multilateral organizations. I had always been working with either nonprofits or, mostly on the side of social impact, I would say, back home, or my entire life. So I wasn't really interested in either starting a business or, that wasn't really, or even working for a business. That wasn't part of my plan. I mentioned that very often. I never sold lemonade. I was never the salesperson as a kid. I was never the person who thought of being in a business or of starting a business. Entrepreneur, I probably didn't even know that word, right? My parents were academics. My family was not necessarily into starting businesses, but there was. I had an idea. I wanted to bring better hummus to New York. And just for some context, that was 2013, 2014. It was the midst of the refugee crisis back home, back in Lebanon. At the time, we had about 2 million Syrian refugees in a country of about 4 million people. And you can only imagine the level of, issues, whether, hardships for the refugees being resettled, problems within the country. I'm not going to go there, but basically I had left the country with a bit of a guilt in the back of my mind for not being able to do anything about it. But then when I thought of bringing better hummus to New York and started thinking of who could make really good hummus, clearly I'm not a great cook myself. I'm good. I like what I make, but I'm definitely not the right person to be making hummus at scale and bringing that to New York. But there I thought of the Syrian refugee community, or Syrian refugees being resettled in New York at the time, as the perfect community to find someone to bring basically better hummus, or to fill that gap in the market for better hummus in New York City. So that's it in short. Initially, I remember I went to Sarah and told her, "Oh, I have this good idea for a business. It's hummus that's made by Syrian refugees here in New York." And Sarah mentioned, "Oh, it's cute, but you probably need to kind of tighten up the idea a little bit." And this is really where things started. Clearly, we never sold that hummus. That was really just the spark, the idea that kind of put us on track. But the idea, we've pivoted a few times since then. We moved from thinking of making hummus to writing business plans for delivering meals directly to individuals. At the time, I'm giving you the long story, but then, we can go back to other details later. But basically, we went through a few iterations. The first iteration was delivering, again, home style meals directly to consumers at home. For the lack of resources, funding, or logistical expertise, we really geared away from that and went into catering instead, which was way less capital intensive and resource intensive. We could, we would book, get a gig. Sarah's birthday was actually one of the very first ones we did, right? We would book a gig, get paid in advance, secure all the ingredients, kitchen space, chef hours, all of that, deliver. And then cash flow wise, it was very easy to start without having a huge capital to begin with. And we kind of fell on a market that was really booming at the time, that up until last month, I would say, was still booming and growing, which is mostly the corporate catering market. So we were really focusing on corporate catering, working mostly with small and large enterprises. I would say anything from startups, nonprofits hosting gala dinners, small and large consultancy firms or law firms, universities, Columbia and NYU, Fordham. Clearly Columbia is one of our biggest customers, and clearly smaller scale individuals hosting dinners at home. So that's kind of, I don't want to go much longer on this, but I think, does that give you enough of a context, Sarah? Do you feel like this?
Yeah, and you're being modest, because the catering business is a very competitive business, and you, I think, went like this. I mean, you really, starting with I think it was my 30th birthday, maybe 25th, you, from there, won the WeWork Creator Award, and won, I think, $400,000 and $1 million contract. So you were serving, before WeWork went through what WeWork went through, you were serving hundreds of meals a week to WeWork employees. I think you did it extremely well. And I think it's not just because there was a market, but I think you're an amazing business person. So let's talk about the past 3 weeks. And I was pretty amazed how quickly you pivoted back to one of your initial ideas, which was home delivery, knowing there are no catering events for at least the foreseeable future. And you quickly moved towards the home. Want to hear a little bit about that, and then we can talk about some of the other challenges, like people and health, and I know things that are on your mind.
Sure. And maybe to continue kind of off of what you had started, Sarah, we were growing on a very constant level. I would say we had been doubling in sales year over year, month over month. We were really on a trend, and this was, I'm sure every single business is saying this, but really March was supposed to be, you know, the month we actually make it, right? The next few months we were counting on this to kind of boom ever. I feel I was feeling like everything we had been building for the past 3 or 4 years was kind of materializing right now. So yeah, we were expecting a really booming few months coming. I mean, now in the near future. But basically, the whole thing started, I would say, around mid-February, when we started getting signals. I mean, I'm sure we knew about coronavirus, COVID-19 starting in China. There was still very little talk about it here in the US. I think it was still like, I don't think anyone was really concerned about it yet. But we did start seeing some cancellations, or some of our biggest customers who used to have weekly orders, especially larger tech companies, right? They started asking their employees to work from home. And this is where catering started kind of getting canceled, or, you know, our events started getting canceled. I don't know, I know Susan is here. I'm not sure if I should mention that, but we also, you know, the Colombia, the SIPA alumni dinner, it was one of the highlights of our April. That also got canceled kind of early on. And we started getting this sort of signals from other events too, not only in the immediate future. So it wasn't only in March or like next week. We started even getting events that we were planning for, really large scale events that we were already in the proposal phase, or in a proposal that was already accepted for April, May, even June. We had a really large contract for June where they sent us an email saying, you know, we're canceling the whole event. And this is where we just knew there was, you know, a signal early on that something needed to switch. And this is where we started kind of the first pivot. We went through a few different pivots, even in the past 3 weeks. I think we pivoted twice in the past 3 to 4 weeks. So that's, again, early March, probably first week of March, we started hearing signals. I think Colombia itself had canceled. At one point, there was a note that was sent to the entire Colombia community saying no more catering allowed, except if it's in individual bowls. No more, you know, the regular style of catering. And immediately after that, in a matter of 2 days, we changed our entire menu. So we went from a regular caterer to a caterer that delivered everything in individual boxes. That might seem like, you know, an easy deal, but it's an entirely different menu. So we had to switch menu completely. It's an entirely new website. Our tech team, I think we mentioned that to them on a Thursday. The following Monday, we had an entirely new website on. The team probably spent 2 to 3 overnights, right, where they just worked on the website just to get it ready for the following Monday. The whole team was working nonstop just so we could be ready. You know, the following Monday, we had an entirely new menu, kind of tailored to that new style of catering that we kind of launched, and at the same time marketing, also letting our customers know that we were now doing that that style of catering and all of that. Anyway, let's say we were ready to launch on a Monday. On Wednesday, we started hearing echoes of companies actually closing entirely and asking their employees to work entirely from home. So this is where we knew catering as an industry was dead for at least a couple months. So this is kind of what pushed us to do our second pivot. Everything we had done for the week prior, we put in the garbage can. And again, we restarted with an entirely new menu, an entirely new, photo shoot to get all of the photos, designing, training the chefs on a new level of packaging. Long story short, what we came up with, we knew that people were going to work from home. We knew that companies were not going to order from us anymore. So we knew we had to move from B2B to B2C. So business to consumers rather than business to business model, and target our fans to begin with directly at home. So this is where we had our second pivot, and we launched a new product that we're calling now a stay-at-home care package. That's a package with a week works worth of food. So it's a full week's worth of breakfast, lunch, snacks, and desserts designed to last you for an entire week when you're working from home, for one person for about an entire week. And that includes food from 6 different chefs, 6 different countries, still building on what we were doing as a catering business. So still kind of using the same value propositions, I would say, just we were calling it, and initially we're calling it, your favorite catering now delivered in a safe, sealed container right to your door, right? It's kind of...
Now, can I chime in a sec? Because I can see people are asking questions, and I think they're relevant for right now. So I want to actually interrupt. Can you give context to how large, like how many chefs do you have? Mm-hmm. How big is the company right now?
Yeah, we're, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, answer another question.
Yeah, so we are a team of about 30 people today on payroll, and that's a mix of chefs, sous chefs, delivery people, administrative staff, sales, marketing, customer service, and myself. So we're a team of a total of 30 people.
And you have a facility in Queens, right? You're in Long Island, in Astoria?
Correct, Long Island City.
Long Island City. So you have I'm just thinking about also the size of your sort of monthly nut, includes rent, all these people, health insurance, etc.
Right.
But let's go back to your pivot, because I've actually ordered your food last week, and I'm staying with my sister in New Jersey, and you actually delivered to us. And my brother-in-law is very serious about keeping things clean. So he requires things to sit in the garage for 24 hours. And I'm like, no, it's Manal's food. We have to bring it up. But it was so well packaged with a sticker on top telling you exactly how it had been prepared and your safety precautions and what to do to stay safe. It was so well done that he allowed it in the house. So that was pretty miraculous. But that again is, to me, evidence of how I'm just so impressed by how professionally you've done things and so quickly. And so I guess a quick question is, you say we a lot, but you're the CEO, you're sort of the bottom line decision maker. And it's hard to be an entrepreneur because it's often sort of a lonely place because you're making some really tough decisions. Who's part of that inner circle that you're tapping into when you're making decisions the past few weeks? Or are you having to just make executive decisions because it's so quick?
I think it's probably a bit of both. I'm probably the one kind of making the decisions and deciding in whether to go in this direction or another and kind of pushing for it. But I'm really proud to have a really good team helping out. So I definitely wouldn't have been able to do all we've done, and launch an entirely new product in a week. That's completely unreasonable. That's something I would have thought I needed, at least $1 million in funding and 6 to 7 months to just launch, right? A month ago. And we launched it in less than a week, 4 days, and the product was out. which I think is kind of an incredible thing, not to pat myself on the back, but it's really an incredible thing that the whole team did. And to answer your question, I think it's a combination, it's a core team, I would say, of myself, Alex, who handles our customer experience, so anything that's customer experience, and who kind of handled mostly the marketing side of things recently. A new team member who joined us on customer service, so really handling all customer service questions, sales, all of that. And our kitchen manager who handles the product itself, so deciding on, you know, which box to use, how to do, you know, how to package everything in those small containers. And the fifth instrumental person is Sarujan, the head of our delivery team, who's actually the son of one of our chefs. Sarujan has been instrumental in also structuring a delivery team. You know, even the delivery team has changed. The delivery process is completely different. So I think each one of those 5 people took their role really seriously, from myself kind of just doing the overall strategy, deciding on where to go, Alex leading on marketing, Scarlett leading on customer service, Jovier leading on production capacity at the kitchen and kind of leading the chefs, training the chefs on a new product, and Sarujan leading on delivery logistics. The nice thing though, what kind of allowed all of that to happen is that all of us clearly, this entire team has been working with us for probably close to 2 years now, if not more, except for customer service who joined us a couple of months ago. But everyone kind of already knew everything about how we operate, how we all are. So that made kind of teamwork really easy, and people were just like doing their own thing. And then it just came together really, really quickly. That's one thing. The other thing is, I think we had built technology in a way that enabled us to pivot really quickly. And by technology, I don't just mean the website. We've been investing a lot of, not necessarily financial resources as much as energy and kind of, you know, human resources, or mostly energy, right, into building a technology both on the customer service end, in kind of the phone answering, how that entire process is, handling orders as they come in, and kind of the back end of the website. What else? Delivery logistics. So we already had a system, kind of a system to optimize deliveries and kind of route deliveries. So all of that was kind of put into action really quickly. And if we didn't have all those tools, we definitely wouldn't have been able to launch this in a week. So we had tools we were kind of using on a low tech level, let's say, before in catering, and all of a sudden we just moved. We upgraded any commitments we have, any subscriptions we had, so that we were using the next level, or the next tier, including customer CRM actually. So all of these tools, CRM, on-fleet, delivery optimization, messaging, and automating everything for, you know, when someone places an order, they receive an email, confirmation, a receipt. All of that was already in place for catering. We just kind of repurposed it really quickly. And I think that was also instrumental in getting there.
You're both a business person, but also you're a human, and that humanity and that empathy really comes out. Like, you care about the business you're building for the team that's building it, not just for yourself. I think that's unique, and it's a reason you're successful. But I remember when I met Manal and she mentioned, I said her hummus idea was cute. I don't remember saying that. Probably did. But she probably wanted to prove me wrong, that it wasn't just cute, but a good business idea. So she actually showed up at my apartment. It was many students just show up at my apartment, but she came to my apartment and brought me hummus, and a lot of hummus. And it was honestly the best hummus I've ever tasted. But I remember thinking, who does that, right? And I myself have started a number of things, and you have to be scrappy and you have to keep going. And even if people tell you it's a bad idea, you still plow ahead. So I think she has just this really strong will, scrappy. She's not afraid of making decisions, right? She's making really tough decisions right now that are impacting lives and her life. So I just think, you know, she's just going to keep going. So I think there's that sort of grit that people talk about that she definitely has. It's hard to be an entrepreneur. Although I think SIPA has produced some incredible people. We actually profiled them. It's on SIPA's website. If you Google SIPA entrepreneurs, they're 25 profiled. I think what they all have in common probably is that empathy and passion for solving a problem in the world, because SIPA students actually understand global problems. So I think there's that. We have 2 minutes, so I want to put in my plug. So Manal and I, we met when she was a student, but then she spent 2 or 3 actually years in what's known as the Colombia Startup Lab. So Colombia Entrepreneurship, Innovation and Design set up a startup lab down at a WeWork in Soho. Obviously it's currently on hiatus, but it will open again. And it houses alumni startups from SIPA, business, engineering, public health, social work, medicine, and it's housed 250 startups to date, and raised $55 million and had $100 million in exits. So if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, you need to spend a little time at this lab. And applications are currently open. The deadline is May 1st. You need to be an alum by June 1st in order to apply, or be part of a team that includes an alum. So I think Bonnie's going to paste it into the chat so everyone can see a link. So any aspiring entrepreneurs who are either current students or alumni are welcome to apply. So, and feel free to email me or Bonnie. She can put in our emails as well into the chat if you're interested. And then the last thing I want to say before I thank Manal is today's webinar will be part of a series of webinars on COVID-19 and its impact on startups, nonprofits, big NGOs, private sector, et cetera. We have one in 2 weeks with a social service organization that is a $100 million nonprofit serving homeless in New York City. So we'll hear about their response to that. But this is sponsored by SIPA, the Startup Lab, and Colombia Entrepreneurship. So I want to thank everybody who helped put this together. Thank you, Bonnie, Idan, Allison from the SIPA management team for their help. And Manal, thank you, you're amazing. And we so appreciate your time. I'm sure this is a busy day and time, but really you're always so generous in meeting with us. So thank you, and we all wish you luck, and please reach out for help. And thanks to everyone for joining us today.
Thank you, and thank everyone. Just in case anyone wants to get in touch, I saw maybe there were a couple of questions we did not have time to answer. Feel free to reach out to me. My email is Manal, my first name, @etoffee.com.
Thank you.
Yes, too. So feel free to get in touch.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. I think, Manal, you and I can hang out if anyone was going to stay on, if they want to ask questions. I have a few minutes.
Yeah, I have time.
Great. Thanks, everyone. And also there was a survey link posted amidst all the thank yous in the chat.
Oh,
so if you have a moment, please take that survey to let us know how we did. And thank you, Manal and Sarah. This was wonderful.
Thank you. Is Idan still on? Idan, I can bring you back in. No, I can't.
I think I'll have to join again.
I know someone asked about the question about a restaurant that we probably didn't really address. I mean, we addressed it kind of quickly in terms, someone is asking, they just switched to delivery, but it's less cash, right? How do you decide when it's better to stop and just continue working differently? And that's definitely something I struggled and still struggle with. Like, how do you know, maybe it's just better to close, have everyone go on unemployment, right? So our employees would still get paid, still get to survive. So I completely agree with your question. I think the only thing that makes me continue on a personal level and as a business level is that I see the potential in those packages. There's potential even beyond this crisis. So I think this is a product that we could continue doing even after this is over. So part of, if we run at an operational loss, to me, it's more of an investment. It's not necessarily a loss, provided we can kind of have enough cash to survive, right? Provided we get those loans, provided we get the money. But to me, I see it, even if we operate at a loss, it's an investment because it's a product we could continue selling and that could become profitable, maybe even highly profitable and highly scalable even after this crisis is over. So I hope this answers your question. I think if you feel like this is not necessarily, if you're operating at a loss, and this is not necessarily an investment into something that will make you even more profitable or even more scalable or even better after the crisis is over, probably better to stop, right? And say, why keep operating at a loss, keep losing money that you could probably save and kind of be able to restart in a few months. If it's something that will help you become more scalable after, I would probably keep at it, provided you have enough resources to just survive at least 5-6 months. That's kind of how I'm approaching it. I hope that's helpful. That was it.
I don't know if they're still on, but well, question, because we're all still trying to figure out this CARES Act and whether it's worth applying. It seems like a no-brainer, but if you're not going to continue, it may give you cash short term, but then you're going out of business anyway. It's still worth getting that support, right?
Don't continue. That's still money. I mean, if you're bankrupt,
unless you're shutting down next week, it's worth getting.
Exactly. I'm definitely up for that. And that allows you, even if we decide to close for 2 weeks and have everyone stay home for 2 weeks, that still makes sense, because they're, I mean, if it's forgivable, if it's really forgivable, then you're getting their salaries back anyway, right? So
yeah.
Definitely a no-brainer. We're going to do that. The only thing I worry about is more like from a marketing perspective. Closing for 2 weeks, what are we going to do with the marketing momentum? Can we regain those customers, or is it kind of restarting from scratch?
Right. A bunch of people have questions. Some, I don't know if they're still on. Someone asked about your experience growing up. How did you become a consultant in Peru and the Middle East?
It was in Lebanon, by the way, not Peru. I did do an internship while at SIPA in Panama, if that's
okay, maybe.
That was an internship that I secured through SIPA contacts, probably. And I became a consultant. So growing up, my parents were both, my mom is a sociologist and my father is, my mom is a social worker, my father is a sociologist. So I kind of grew up, and I was born in the middle of, or towards the end of the civil war in Lebanon. So I spent, my early years during the civil war, and then my childhood kind of in the post-Civil War Lebanon, with my parents being in the social field. So they did tons of volunteering, tons of nonprofit work. And I was always kind of involved in that, to the point where as a kid, I always thought like the last thing I would consider doing is social work or something in the social field, because I felt like my parents did so much of that. But anyway, I don't want to go too long. Basically, I think that's kind of why I have always been interested in doing something social rather than just pure business, maybe. I hope that answers the question. And becoming an environmental consultant, I did studies in environmental management. After that, through SIPA, I secured an internship in Panama at the UNDP. I think if you're at SIPA, that's probably the type of things you're looking at.
Yeah. Anyone else have a question? Maybe put it in the chat. Otherwise, I think we'll wrap so Manal can go back to her relaxing afternoon.
Very. Someone asked, what link do you want us to share? I'm going to write that again. That's definitely the, I'll write that again right now.
Someone was asking about, if it comes to the point you have to let your employees go, will you use charity? So remember, Manal's business is a for-profit, not a nonprofit. So I think you were pointing out that some restaurants that are also for-profits, Amazon actually was asking for donations, bonkers. You should take over running that company.
No, honestly, I think I don't know who's on the group right now, but one of the things, I hope no one takes this personally, or let's keep this off the record. I was incredibly disappointed with Union Square Hospitality Group, Danny Meyer's company. They closed, first week before this whole thing even started, they laid off 2,000 people. And I thought that was really, as a tiny company with very limited resources, we knew we barely had a few weeks of cash flow, right, of runway. Yeah. And we decided to keep going. We didn't put people on the streets, right? We kind of took that into consideration, and they probably have a good buffer, right? I'm sure they could figure out some level of buffer money. I was kind of really annoyed that they just like let people go and started raising donations instead. I felt like
that was also early. So to me, this is the first crisis that is global, right? So like even after 9/11, which many of us lived through, that was, you know, it was the US, but it was New York City, and people rallied to support New Yorkers.
Yeah.
We have to support everybody. There's no one who's not impacted. So it's hard to raise charitable money right now unless people are on the front lines, if you ask me, because every business is struggling.
There's two. There's that for employees from restaurants. I think, I mean, the nice thing right now, I think unemployment money is getting dispersed pretty quickly. I mean, I do understand. I'm not saying there's no need for charity. I'm just saying for us, the way we're approaching it right now, if we have to close, we'll just make sure people have enough money to keep going until they receive their unemployment money. But we're really relying on unemployment rather than charity money. The only condition where that's actually not met, and where I totally understand every single restaurant that has to do that, luckily or not, I don't know, we operate with refugees. All of them have employment authorization documents. So all of them are allowed to work. All of them are eligible for unemployment. Most restaurants, though, have undocumented immigrants on the team. And this is where it's a real struggle, because those are people who have zero resources to work with. No unemployment, the CARE Act, like all of these resources coming out right now, none of it covers them. So this is where I completely understand charity. And this is part of why I don't believe we as a company will need that. We don't have undocumented immigrants on the team, but tons of customers, tons of restaurants too. So this is where I think we all need to be mindful, and maybe this is where we need to channel our donations. Clearly frontline workers, but also undocumented immigrants who are now left with nothing. Yeah,
no, that makes a lot of sense. Anyone, a lot of people are asking a question related to this same issue of why you wouldn't.
Yeah, someone asked again, they don't understand why we don't want to do charity. So again, I'm going to talk quickly about our goals at Eat Off Beat. The first is to create quality jobs for talented refugees. The second is to build bridges between them, us cooking, and New Yorkers eating our food. And the third ultimately is about changing the narrative around refugees, right? We're trying to showcase a different and a more positive story where refugees are not necessarily relying on charity as kind of is common in the narrative today, where refugees are actually creating value, helping. So we always pitch it in a way where we, refugees, immigrants, are helping New York. We're helping New Yorkers rather than waiting for help and kind of sitting at home and kind of relying on charity. So this is kind of my main concern. Again, as a very specific concept and company that we are, I definitely have nothing against charity. And I mean, clearly I come from a nonprofit background, right? I'm totally for it in any other context, but as a business ourselves, we've made the very intentional decision to do it as a for-profit. Because one, we believe there's no need for charity money, right? The business model works. We're selling a product, and
and people buy things once because of charity, but not ongoing, right? The food has to be good.
Exactly.
So you're relying on the food.
Exactly.
All right, I think we'll wrap now. People are saying thanks, they get it. Manal, thank you again. And we're all rooting for you, and we know you're going to be fine. And we're all in this together. So please reach out, and hopefully we'll get lots of orders after today. Let us know.
I hope so. Yeah. Please tell them to share. If you ask anyone to buy it, like mention that in the field of how did you hear about us? If you just
say webinar. Say webinar. Amazing.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Manal.
Have a good rest of the day.
Thanks so much.